would like to think that Jimmy Kahn specifically told his secretary, like, hey, this is my friend Peter. That's just going to be the end of the tweet. And his secretary was just going line by line, like verbatim, posting that on Twitter. That's to like troll Jimmy Kahn because secretly his secretary hates Jimmy Kahn.
He specifically tells her, just use the one with the chest hair. The people on the internet like the chest hair, right? I don't fucking know. I'm gonna go get some linguine.
And we've been recording, John, as we had our thoughts about Jimmy Kahn and his amazing Twitter post with the picture of him and his good old friend Peter Falk. Enough said.
Every time you get me, every freaking time, man.
Absolutely. So welcome, loyal listeners, one and all, to another edition of the Ludic Loungecast. I, of course, am Antonicus Maximus IV, and with me, as always, is one Mr. John Soares.
I feel like you're turning into, who's the announcer? Bob Costas?
I wish, dude. Bob Costas is the shit. Have you ever heard Bob Costas announce a baseball game?
Yes, I have.
Isn't it amazing?
It is, and so is his hairpiece.
Oh, don't say that. I thought you were going to say the pink guy, to be honest with you. Calling back to the Olympics photo from, 10 years ago?
Oh my God, that's right. He got pink eye.
Yeah.
That's for the folks at home who want to do an internet deep dive on famous cases of pink eye.
That's a hell of a way to get pink eye.
I know. I once got pink eye from Freddie Mercury in a bathroom.
Oh.
I have no idea why I put those words together.
I was going to make a joke about that, but I don't want to get too dark. Now, speaking of things that are dark, John, today, and loyal listeners listening at home, John and I are going to go over our top 5 as spooky. That's it. That's the speech.
Top 5 spooky. Okay. That means Anthony is leaving it up to me to elaborate, which I'm happy to do because I'm so pretty. This month of October, the Ludic Lounge is going to do something very special and very different. We're going to keep it horror themed here at the Ludic Lounge. And Ludic
John said horror.
I feel judgment in that face, Anthony.
No, sorry, I was looking at my beautiful wife who's sitting on across the room. Continue.
That is also fair. So we're going to keep it horror themed, and we're going to keep it horror.
We're going to keep it horror themed,
ladies and gentlemen. To open up our month of October, and I think we're having some internet troubles here.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Sorry, this is Editor-in-Chief Antonicus Maximus apologizing to you because we had a lot of audio issues this episode. But we also have a nice little blooper that I'm going to keep in here that I hope you enjoy as well. So sorry again that it's not up to the normal quality. I don't know what happened. Just poor internet in a pandemic. Thank you for lounging with us. Thank you for staying with us. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode.
How are you going to talk about horror movies when you're a big old baby and you don't like horror?
I was going to mention that, dear. Unpause.
Now, folks, here at the Ludic Lounge, we're going to be doing a special theme month this week. We are doing an all spooky season.
Spooky!
I was giving you the opportunity to do your spooky again. This week on the Loungecast, we're going to open with Anthony and I's respective top 5 horror movies of all time. Even though Anthony is a big fat wimp when it comes to horror.
Oh, yeah. Like these, I'm telling you right now, I think I've only seen one of these on my top 5 more than one time.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to lie.
Now you're making me think. I was going to say, I personally myself, I thought I was a little bit of a horror wimp, but each one of my top 5s I've seen at least, 2-3 times.
Well, good for you, John, because I'm a big old baby. So I've seen them once, and I'm like, you know what? That's fine. I don't need to remember who did what and what did who.
And I have great, big, spooky balls.
Yes, you have gigantic, spooky testicular cancer.
I mean, I think my version is going to end up being the title of the podcast episode, but...
Big old spooky balls. That's way better.
Yeah, big old spooky balls, because we're going to have a ball here. At the Ludic Loungecast. Hey!
Transition.
Oh! Before we get into our top 5, though, Anthony and I are going to do our usual pop culture breakdown, talk about things that we've been doing.
So John, you know one thing I've been doing?
What have you been doing, Anthony?
I've been jonesing and yearning down into my loins the announcement of the Mass Effect Trilogy coming to the next gen.
Well, to be fair, we don't know if that's the case.
Well, John, to be fair, I'd have to not be Antonicus.
Well, that is. I will allow you that one. For those of you not aware, there was a article on US Gamer that was written by Eric Van Allen that was in part due to a report from a other news source that talked about what's happening with the Mass Effect remaster. It sounds like COVID ended up delaying it somewhat. It was aiming for an October release, and then shutdowns happened, and people were stuck at home, and delays occurred. In addition to COVID, it seems like Mass Effect 1 is being a bastard. Anthony, you want to talk about Mass Effect 1 and how it's being a bastard?
So, loyal listeners, Mass Effect 1, I'm going to do a quick search on, but I'm assuming it came out early, I would say about mid-2000s. But even at that...
I would say like 2006, 2007? Because we were in high school when
2007. November 20th, 2007, yes. So it came out in that year. And originally it was a more in-depth RPG. Still a space opera, as we know the Mass Effect Trilogy to be. But at that point, it was more so of a third-person over-the-shoulder. But the weapon system was more wonky. The powers could be broken at times. And it is essentially unplayable. Like, you can try to play it. You have probably a better time playing it on PC than you would on console. I'm just going to put that out there. However, I will say that it's still a great story. It still holds up, being that I've played the first Mass Effect approximately 4 to 5 times all the way through. I can say that the combat sucks, but the story is still valid, and the graphics are still really good, John.
Honestly, I would I agree and disagree to an extent, and that's part of the charm here of the Ludic Loungecast. We have interesting discussion. I think gameplay-wise, the problem is that Mass Effect 2 and 3 ended up being a lot more propulsive and aggressive in how it approached being a third-person shooter. And the first Mass Effect is very much falling in line with a prototypical RPG, even if it is an over-the-shoulder third-person shooter. And I tried getting my fiance to play it, and one really frustrated the hell out of her, and I disagree on the graphics. I think it doesn't look all that sharp compared to 2 or 3, especially 3.
Well, yeah, I mean, comparing it to 2 and 3, I see your point, especially 3. But you also have to remember 3 came out like 3 to 5 years later, perhaps, at least
2012, I think.
Yeah, so what is that, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So 5 years, about 5 years later. So there were advances, of course. But the first Mass Effect, now I'm not talking about like in-combat graphics, because those could really be janky, but like the cutscenes, the conversation when you're just doing the dialogue wheel, that was still very pretty. Like I'm thinking of a specific right now, the conversation wheel talking with like Ashley Williams about her past on the lower decks of the first Normandy. And I'm just remembering, and again, it's not just nostalgia because I did recently look into it and play it, that it was still pretty decent. The conversational camera, maybe because it was still so static, it wasn't, so unwieldy. But overall, it still is not bad compared to, like, say, Dragon Age Origins, right?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, what the first Mass Effect is a good skeleton for what came afterwards. But to ask people to play it now, I think would definitely be a significant hurdle. And what I imagine EA and most Mass Effect fans are afraid of is that new fans come to Mass Effect 1 and are so turned off by the experience that they don't go to 2 or 3. Or even Andromeda, because I imagine Andromeda is still something that might be on the table, but at this point we kind of don't really know.
I hope they
But
do, John, and we've discussed this, but ultimately I think they're just going to scrap it. Maybe that's just the pessimist in me, but I feel like they're going to just scrap it because there's such negative, toxic fucking people in this world.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe at some point we might see something, but I think it's so far down the line that it's hard to say. And whatever the success of this Mass Effect remaster is going to be, will likely dictate whatever future Andromeda is going to have, if anything.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, and what the US Gamer article also implied is that we're looking at a first quarter 2021 release. We don't have anything concrete yet. We don't really have anything about a console per se. I imagine it's still probably going to be for PS4 and the current Xbox round, because I don't really know the names off the top of my head.
Series X, I believe.
Yeah, so I think for Microsoft and Sony know that not a significant number of people are going to jump over to the new generation. So they're going to do what they can to keep games coming out on that. For example, they just announced a remaster of the PS2 classic Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time.
Because everyone's been beckoning for that, John.
I have. I love that game.
Oh, I know you have, but I'm just saying, like, you're one in the minority. It was the joke I was making.
I mean, sure. I mean, I'm just taking offense for everybody who is like me and is excited for that game.
And I'm not saying it's a bad game. I'm just saying that that was announced and everyone went, oh, okay.
As did I, because I was not expecting it.
Yeah.
But I mean, to use Prince of Persia as an example, that game is only for this current generation, not for the PS5, whatever the Xbox is called generation that's upcoming. At least for right now. I know that Marvel's Avengers is, for those who bought the game, they're guaranteed a free PS5 or Xbox upgrade, but there's no announcement on how to do that as of quite yet.
Yeah. Then the Madden's doing the same thing, and I believe, and more than likely, the new NBA 2K game will probably do the same.
Can we talk about that for a second?
Absolutely.
That's unprecedented, isn't it? This whole, we're going to give you a free upgrade of a game that you bought on the previous generation so you can play it on the new generation. I mean,
yes. I cannot remember like going from the 360 to the One or the PS3 to the PS4. I don't remember the big bad video game companies going like, hey, I know you just bought, Madden 2017. I don't know. I just threw that out there. We're giving you the free upgrade because of you got a new system. And if anything, they just released it for both consoles and say, hey, you pick and choose. Like a particular example of this was Madden 2006, John, was at the end of the original Xbox era going into the Xbox 360 era. And so because of that, they released it for both consoles. Well, more than just the two Xbox consoles, but they released them for both of the Xbox consoles. And funny enough, the one for the original Xbox ended up playing a lot better than the one for the 360. The 360 one was missing a lot of different features that the Xbox OG had, which I always found amazing.
Which I imagine is just because they were probably rushed for time and trying to get that thing out for purchase at a reasonable time, But I think that the old system is what they're doing with what they have done with Prince of Persia or Mass Effect, where you buy the original version, but at a certain point you'll buy the remaster version for the new console. Yeah, that's what PlayStation did with Last of Us, with the that first Tomb Raider game from Crystal Dynamics. Some of the God of War games, those were just remastered and put onto PS4 so that they were available. But nothing about free upgrades.
Well, kind of, sort of. So you brought the example of, oh gosh darn it, which games did you just list? I'm losing my train of thought. But essentially, some of those games, talking about the PlayStations, became the free games of the month if you subscribe to the PS subscription. And they became the Xbox. Like I know the Xbox one of the Tomb Raider games was their like free game of the month. And one of the games you previously mentioned, Last of Us, actually was kind of a free, like if you bought the PS4, like my PS4 when I bought it came with a free copy of The Last of Us for PS4.
And my fiance got the Uncharted 4 Special Edition PlayStation 4 that came with Uncharted 4. So, yeah, it's fancy. I imagine they're probably going to be doing that for, like Spider-Man Miles Morales or something.
More than likely. But even, John, you mentioned the Uncharted Trilogy dropped to be a free PS game of the month. As did Uncharted 4, but the Uncharted Trilogy did. So I own the disc, but then again, for my PS3, that is, but it became an exclusive free game of the month. Like, I think that was just a few months ago at this point. So they it's kind of an upgrade, but again, you had to subscribe and pay the $50 a year or $60 a year or whatever it is to be a part of the club, quote unquote.
So now we're at this unprecedented area where we're getting free upgrades to a new console, which, to be honest, I think is due in part to COVID, and they're just being nice about it, which, I mean, take it with a grain of salt, I suppose, but I mean, they won't be able to charge you for it later, but it's just, I guess
to the whole COVID argument that you made, John, is some of these upgrades are talking about, like we mentioned the Madden one, it's, you can buy the game for current gen, but it's not that your standard $60 edition. You have to buy, it's like $100 edition, and that gives you the free upgrade to the next gen.
Right.
So you're still paying more technically, but you are getting the upgrade per se. So it's not a whole altruistic thing,
Especially if you look at what they're doing with Spider-Man Miles Morales. If you buy like the Super Deluxe Edition, you get the original Spider-Man game remastered for PS5, and the only way you could do that is if you buy the super fancy Deluxe Edition for PS5.
Right.
It's not going to be available as a digital download. It's not going to be a separate release. You have to buy that one specific version of Miles Morales.
Which I probably will, more than likely.
Which I have pre-ordered. So, I mean, they got me.
They got us. They got us by the big old spooky balls.
And we haven't had a chance to talk about how these consoles rolled out, because boy, was it a shit show, man.
Jesus. So after Sony was sitting there saying, we're not going to just surprise you all with the pre-order dates, they went ahead and surprised us all with the pre-order dates.
Yeah, I mean, you weren't able to watch live because I think you were at work. I was able to watch live because I just had it on in the background. Right. And Sony's announcement was at that press conference for the unveiling of like the full details of the console and various games, was that the following day, retailers would start putting up pre-orders.
Yeah.
That didn't happen, Anthony.
No, it didn't. It put all the consumers in a panic, although, John, to which everybody just was flying to Amazon.com, Walmart.com, BestBuy.com, Target.com. They were just flying and trying to just get their grubby little hands on it all.
Yeah, and you somewhat buried the lead in that the retailers jumped the gun.
Yes, I did bury the lead on that.
That was the issue. That's why people were running around on websites trying to figure out where to get this freaking console, is because one retailer started putting it up. Everyone started saying, Walmart has it. And then everybody would go to Walmart. And then everybody would go to Best Buy and Amazon, so much to the point that Best Buy's website was practically useless for that day after that conference.
Yeah.
And then Microsoft, being cheeky, said, we're not going to do that. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And then when the time came for the Xbox pre-orders, the exact same thing happened.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Which was just like come on, guys.
Really? Like, you guys went and thumbed your nose at the competition and said, we're not going to do what you guys did. And then you guys just did the exact same thing.
Exactly. And John, just for our loyal listeners as well as yourself, as you were so eloquently talking about how Xbox did the same thing, I just looked on the Target.com website to see if pre-orders are still on there. And as of right now, they're still all sold out. So this is going to speak to the limited amount of actual consoles that they're going to be releasing. So there might be a case to where a lot of people do not get the console upgrade.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're going to be looking at a very slow release cycle. I mean, in part due to everybody not being able to work as efficiently or in the way that it was used to. I wouldn't say it's efficient, considering the various conversations that have been occurring this year around crunch within game development. If you look back to what happened with the Last of Us Part 2 and the conversation around that, as an example. So I think in the long run that might work better because then, and I'm dealing with this right now. It's just I have just a glut of games between the PlayStation and the Switch.
Oh yeah,
that I'm just kind of drowning right now because I literally don't know what I can work with.
Yeah, exactly. Nintendo's got me by the big old spooky balls, John, because they keep throwing up like great deals where they're putting games like 50% off on their store.
I know.
And I'm like, God damn it! Of course I'm going to spend $7 for this, tactical RPG game that looks semi-interesting. It's been on my wish list for a while. And so they got me by the big old spooky balls, John. So, because I have Divinity 2 still to finish. I just bought this one. I bought on PlayStation. They're having still deals. So I bought 2 games on my PS4. So that's like a total of 5 or 6 games right there that I still have to finish. On top of the 2 I've already been playing and talked about on the last Loungecast episode. So I got like a docket of 10 plus games right now.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. And the Switch, I got to put some dedicated time into because there's a lot of games there that have just not been addressed. But I did try this last weekend, Anthony. I tried my hand at Super Mario 3D All-Stars.
Excellent. I'm glad you picked that up, John.
Yeah. It for those not aware of the news release there, Super Mario 3D All-Stars is a Switch remaster of 3 3D Super Mario games. They are considered classics for their respective consoles. The first is Super Mario 64, which is a legend from our childhood, which, funny enough, I never played when I was a kid.
Neither did I, to be honest with you.
Yeah. In addition to Super Mario 64, it has Super Mario Sunshine that was originally for the Nintendo GameCube, and Super Mario Galaxy that was originally part of the Wii. I played 2 of the 3 games on this package, Anthony, and I think I understand why I never played Super Mario 64 when I was a kid.
Yeah, I don't think I could because of just the camera angles and the oddity of some of the levels and how your camera doesn't necessarily move with you.
It carried over to this Switch port, man. So, I mean, I couldn't. I tried for like maybe an hour, and it's just the camera and the controls are just not as. And this is me coming off of Super Mario Odyssey. Even though I played that a while back, jumping back from the most recent pinnacle of a 3D Mario game to the original pinnacle, it was frustrating more than anything. And it honestly led me to go to Super Mario Sunshine just because that was another one that I never got to play because I didn't have, I did have a GameCube, but I just never got Super Mario Sunshine.
Yeah.
I'm a Zelda guy. That's just the God's honest truth. When I get Nintendo, I tend to beeline for Zelda stuff.
Yeah.
And I have there's another bit that I'm going to talk about, kind of larger concept remaster stuff, when I'm done talking about the Mario stuff, because I have some thoughts, Anthony. I got some thoughts.
Bring them on, baby.
Yeah. So I mean, so far, Sunshine plays a lot more like I was expecting to. It's a little bit smoother to play.
Yeah.
But the freaking cameras are like the be all end all for these games, man. If it's a bad camera, then it's honestly just going to like nerf the experience at least somewhat.
Yeah.
That's what's getting me. That's what got me on Super Mario 64. I'm able to work with it a little bit better on sunshine, but I mean, I haven't put enough time into it to really tell you otherwise. And based off of my experience with this next game that I dealt with, because I got frustrated with the Switch games, I don't know when I'm going to get back to it, because I started the remaster to the also PS2 classic Shadow of the Colossus.
Interesting. I have that one because it came out on a free for a month. So talk to me about that, John, because I've been looking to play that at some point.
So Shadow of the Colossus is a game developed by Team Ico, I believe.
Yes.
I'm going to look that. Yes, that is correct.
I'm about 80% sure that is correct.
Yes, it is Team Ico. It was a Sony exclusive. Originally came out on the PlayStation 2, and at the time was heralded as a tremendous achievement in video game storytelling.
Yeah, essentially, not to rain on your parade, John, but this is the game they'd hold up when they talk about like video games is as an art form. They would hold up, this is one of the pinnacles of one of the things they say, no, this is not, this goes beyond just a game. This is actually art.
Especially on the PlayStation, because you have like Metal Gear Solid, you have Final Fantasy VII, you have this.
Right.
Those are the things that immediately come to mind to follow that conversation of game as art, especially on the PlayStation, because that's what the PlayStation is putting its flag on, especially now in this PS4 era, now into the PS5 era, as a single player experience system. Playing this led me to consider, this era of remakes and remasters that we find ourselves in, because God's honest truth, Anthony, this game is one of the most gorgeous things I've seen.
Oh, I believe it.
And and Chelsea was watching me play it, and I told her this was a PS2 game that they completely rebuilt. I believe that is correct. And she looked up a comparison between the PS2 and a regular PS4 and one of a version run on the PS4 Pro, and it is astounding what they did. I think Blue Point Studios, who are typically involved with remasters when it comes to moving up from one console generation to another, because I know that they did the Uncharted trilogy, among others. I can't think of it. The Uncharted, it just pops in my head immediately. And I also think they did Batman Arkham and got a little bit of flack for that, because they changed up there was some color lighting issue between where it was in the original version on the PS3 360 era versus the PS4 Xbox One X era. But it's a gorgeous game. It's a very solemn game. It's a very lonely game.
Yeah.
For those who are unfamiliar, the very simple premise is that you play a young man who is trying to retrieve the soul of a woman. We don't really know what her relationship is with him at the onset, but he goes to this land that no mortal is prohibited to go to try and save her soul. And in order to do that, he has to slaughter a number of beings called colossi, these giant animals. And that they are the only enemies in the game. It is just barren land, between boss fight to boss fight. They're essentially just giant boss fights, and you're just spending your time wandering through this very large world, after you deal with one colossus to the other.
Right.
And you can go find you can find stuff to upgrade yourself. You can find health through finding fruit and trees. You can find lizard tails from lizards that you kill to improve your grip strength. All of which are optional. You don't have to do any of that. You can just go straight from Colossus to Colossus to Colossus and do it that way.
And at first, to my recollection, John, you don't really understand the impact of what you're doing to begin with, but the more Colossi you bring down, the more the world unfolds. Not to spoil, I guess. I mean, it's a PS2 game, but not to
Yeah.
spoil too much. But the more the world unfolds, and so you have to sit with the decision that you're making of what you're doing to this ecosystem.
And you kind of get that pretty quick, to be honest, because when I beat the first one, it it felt wrong.
Yeah.
It felt deeply wrong, and it was just like the thing just the Colossus just was just walking. That was it. It wasn't doing anything. It just what doesn't help is that you're not given any information. Everything's just given to you over time. And at this point in the game, and I never played the PS2 version, so I have no real frame of reference for what will happen. I get the feeling that it's going to be something bad, but I'm still 14 colossi away from whatever the ending is.
Right.
But what Bluepoint did feels like a brand new game. Absolutely. Like it feels like it is in line with an open world game like Ghost of Tsushima, where it is just and granted, Ghost of Tsushima is very much a AAA Assassin's Creed style open world, but there are times where it is very kind of lonely and solemn and quiet because you're just traversing through this world. And I do have frustrations with the game as it is because I think some of the controls are a little bit wonky because you have to jump and then you have to hold R2 to grip and then you have to then press the jump button again. It's all very much just like you have to create like a rhythm for yourself, and it's definitely a challenge, but I'm all there for the challenge. But the thing I wanted to talk about more is just the nature of what a remake is and a remaster is, because like I feel weird calling this a remaster because it feels like a remake, but it's not like a Final Fantasy VII where I think that they're modifying the game to be, I think, the ultimate form of what they were trying to do when that game came out.
Right.
It's like I don't know how much like Bluepoint added like a secret mission to this remaster, but ultimately it's kind of up to you to decide. It doesn't really add anything outside of a collectible, so it's just like I get calling it a remaster over a remake in that sense because you're not fiddling with the game overall. It's just upping it to a new level, but it feels new and fresh to me. In part because I never played the original, so I have no real frame of reference. So I think that might skew my argument, but
No, that's fair, John. But I think the argument still is valid, even if it is slightly skewed. You know what I mean?
and I mean, and earlier this year we saw on the Switch, Link's Awakening got a complete, remake from top to bottom into like a 3D style.
I can't believe that was this year, man.
I know.
Jeez.
I still can't believe that. I mean, I still haven't gotten that game because it's just I know Zelda, that requires me to have a little less of a back catalog to get to.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I mean, that's what I've been playing, and that's what's been occupying my time mostly. Anthony, is there anything outside of what you mentioned that you'd like to add?
I haven't really been doing much gaming, to be quite fair. The gaming I have been doing, I've been trying to knock away at Fell Seal Arbiter's Mark. I'm still trying to put in time to that. It's still good. It's still fun. I'm still enjoying the strategy behind it. My characters are like level 20 plus right now, and I have a character who's completely broken. He's essentially he's like a thief class, so he's very fat, very quick, has a lot of dexterity, and depending on what classes you can choose for him, you can boost and put points into certain classes to up his attack based on his dexterity. So right now he's at a gunner class, and I already maxed out that class. So if at any time, like, he's quick enough to get behind enemies and do a sneak, what's called a sneak attack for a very limited amount of magicka damage, but he just like wails. Like if their HP is 153, he's doing like 150 attack in one shot. Like it's crazy. It's completely broken. But I like the fact that you can, and if I didn't want him to be so broken, I could change his class and try to, upgrade certain other things. But I just like the fact that it's always broken, that one character's broken. He is also a main character for the game, so I hope nothing silly happens, like he dies in the main quest, and then, like, then I'm ass out of a fantastic gunner, so I'll be pissed. But
Yeah.
outside of that, I tried jumping back into Divinity 2 on Switch, and I realized that I wish I had this game more so on my PS4 or Xbox, just because of the graphics change, from Switch to the actual. I love the handheld portability of it, mind you. It's still a great lore. It's still a great game, but I wish I had
not enough power.
Yeah, I just wish I had a little bit more of power, because I've noticed that I'll be going into different areas, and it did it beforehand, but now that I'm jumping back into it after this, many months, it feels like I'm playing it. Just like the buffering of the frames per second trying to load on the Switch, I'm like, this is kind of shitty, and this game deserves more so of an actual all the way up graphics boost. The reason I'm jumping back into it and playing it is because Larian's also doing Baldur's Gate 3. Larian, the studio behind Divinity series, they're doing Baldur's Gate 3, and that looks fantastic.
They're taking it over from BioWare?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, they're actually behind Baldur's Gate, and the third Baldur's Gate.
I thought, so Baldur's Gate's not an original BioWare property then?
If it was, then they bought it out, or they got the rights to it, or whatever have you. I'm not 100% sure, to be quite frank. But
or the rights were never theirs to begin with.
Yeah, something like that.
Might have to do some additional research outside, and report back next week.
Pretty much. Yeah, I did not come prepared, obviously, to talk about the lore of Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, well, you weren't expecting me to just, drop a question bomb like that, to be fair.
Yeah, to be fair. But that's going to be dropping, I think, within the next week or two, actually. Baldur's Gate 3 will be releasing very, very soon. So,
you're going to jump to that? Or
probably not. My backlog is such a huge
pain in the ass.
Yeah. I need to try to clean up and finish some of these games. And I've noticed, John, this isn't the case for you, I know, because you've talked about how you've finished other games. But for some reason, I don't know if it's just this pandemic or what, but I just cannot finish a game to save my damn life this year. Like, I'm thinking back of how many games I've finished this year, and I don't even know if I can count them on one hand. Like, I can't even say if I finished one whole. I know I finished one whole game for sure, but outside of that, I couldn't even tell you if I finished like more than one game.
You know how obsessive I am about keeping track of things. So on the inverse of you, I have a very exact tally of what I've been going through, but like you, I've also been very frustrated with games and starting and stopping a lot. So I haven't finished as much as I probably could have had my focus not have been as split, I guess. I mean, it's just, I talked about it a little bit when I was, describing, my experiences with the Super Mario 3D games and Shadow of the Colossus. I mean, I went from like one game to another game until I finally settled on getting to Shadow of the Colossus. And, I'm going to be saving room a little bit just to jump back to Avengers as DLC comes out for that. But, I mean, primarily I went to the other games because I just got tired of Avengers.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting for some other stuff right now. I know, like, we got Star Wars Squadrons coming up.
Oh, geez,
and whatever, our own plans for that, which we're still kind of fine-tuning. The onset of the PS5 and the next generation coming up within a month.
A month, yeah, you're right.
A month, unless, something causes that delay. Everything causes a delay, which who the hell knows at this point. But no, I get it. It's just we're living in this unprecedented time of perpetual distraction for good reason. You know, we have to deal with growing social concerns that need to be addressed, but the people in charge aren't addressing it, to a whole lot of issues revolving around an inability to talk about mental health in a formative way. So, you know, we just drown it in whatever we have available, but, you know, and we have like thousands and thousands of hours of content, whether it be film or TV or video games or printed media. It's just like we should be able to fill our time, but we're just so inured in the conflicts of the world. It seems like it's impacting whatever focus we have, and this isn't the case for others. I mean, I know some creators are just, you know, they're able to have a creative output. I mean, us in some way, we were able to do that by creating what we're doing here at the Ludic Lounge. You know, we have a moderate, you know, I wouldn't say successful. I don't know what success necessarily is at this point, you know, but I mean, we're putting out stuff weekly. We're staying committed to it. We're keeping up with stuff in order to be able to talk about it and generate stuff for these shows. But I get it. We're living in a worry machine.
Yeah.
And it just gets in the way of, you know, finding time to just stay some kind of sane.
Yeah, I have nothing to add to that, John.
That was a very long-winded pile of bullshit.
That was excellently put, and I'm not just saying that. That was so well put that I have nothing to add to it, because you touched upon my thoughts and my feelings regarding everything going on in the world today, and from a personal experience. So, yeah. John, with that being said, I think it's time to move on to our spooky list.
The spooky list of horror movies.
Yeah.
I don't know what these voices. I sound like Werner Herzog. I don't know what that voice was.
Say that again.
Werner Herzog.
Yeah, I swear to God, with that accent, you said Werner's horsecock.
It's supposed to be Werner Herzog, who is he's a famous director, but most people at this point, I think, know him for being that one old guy in The Mandalorian who's like, I want to see the baby.
Yes.
Yeah. I was doing a very bad impression and labeling it onto him, so we'll just forget it and get into our top 5 horror movies.
And I forgot we're not doing Columbo Files, so there's no transition here, and we'll just go straight into it.
I mean, we could add transition. Transition. I am Adam West, and I'm doing a transition. Robin. I just want you to appreciate the fact that I went from my weird transition guy voice into Adam West very smoothly.
Very smoothly. It was just a hop and a skip, man.
They're next door. Those two voices are next door neighbors to each other anyway, so it works out.
So, John, speaking of things that are right next to each other,
yes,
my list is right next to each other, and they're in no particular order. So I think I'm going to go first, or do you want to go me go, then you go, then me go, then you go?
My list is in no particular order as well, but I think the best way to foster discussion is for one of us to present. We talk about it, and then the other will present, and we'll talk about it. So you go, I go, you go, I go, so on and so forth.
Excellent. So, John, my number 5 movie number 5 is the 1963 Alfred Hitchcock classic, The Birds, John.
Now, Anthony, you've alluded to The Birds on our sister show, The Columbo Files, hosted exclusively by the Ludic Lounge. So go give us a download. Plug. Anthony, tell us about your fear of birds.
Now, John, my fear of birds stems from this movie. This movie is, I mean, if you were to watch it back now, which I will never do, you would probably be like, this is kind of campy. This is kind of the graphics right now compared to what we have now in 2020 for back then is not that great. But, John, this movie is completely terrifying. Literally, it's one of the first instances of utilizing nature as the aspect of horror and not just in addition to whatever big bad thing is going on in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And in this movie, and again, I won't give the whole plot synopsis, but essentially something happens, nature goes wild, and the birds just start attacking this, I think it's San Francisco, if I remember correctly, San Franciscan town. And
Okay.
just the one scene in particular, the most famous scene that sticks in my mind and many other people's out their minds, is a scene where someone tries to take solace in a phone booth, and these birds aren't having it, and they're literally crashing into this phone booth and breaking it open while this poor woman just screams in horror as all these birds are just literally consume her in this telephone booth.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. There's going to be a lot of awkward pauses because Anthony's going to describe horrible things that I haven't seen in movies, and I'm just going to go, what the fuck?
Yeah. So literally, it's not just for myself, but I know a lot of people who have witnessed this movie, especially in their formidable years, will say that it influenced them to kind of have a slight either terror, a full-on terror, or just a slight apprehension around birds and nature, John. And that is my number 5 film.
Now, I'm going to save my honorable mentions for afterwards.
As will I.
Because I have quite a few. And it was, just looking at my listing, and I remembered something that probably should be in my top 5. But I'm going to stick to my guns and go with my original selection. Mostly because I'm ready for those and not for the one that I wanted to add. But my number 5, Anthony, is Predator.
Oh, great choice. I completely forgot about Predator.
Now, Predator is an
Dylan, you son
sci-fi
of a
action movie.
bitch.
Dylan, you son of a bitch. Starring Predator stars me, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and a whole bunch of manly men like Carl Weathers. I'm going to talk about the movie like this.
You should.
Can I talk about the movie?
You should.
Anthony, can I talk about the movie?
I'm right here. Kill me.
Come on, do it. I'm here. Do it. Kill me now.
God, that is a great, great horror movie. See, I think of it in my mind, I didn't think of it as horror. I think of it more as action. But if you break it down, it actually is quite the horror movie because for a good chunk of the movie, you never see the Predator. You just see these group of well-to-do commandos completely like getting killed off one by one by some unseen force.
So, for those of you who haven't seen this over, I think 30-year movie at this point, Predator is the first film of the Predator saga. I wouldn't call it a saga because they're not really all that connected, for the most part. But it is a sci-fi action horror movie directed by John McTiernan and written by brothers Jim and John Thomas, and Shane Black. Apparently did some touch-ups on it. Shane Black of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and The Nice Guys fame. And Shane Black stars in this movie as one of the crew of commandos led by Arnold Schwarzenegger. He plays Hawkins. The radio man is Shane Black. And they are
correctly, John. They don't even they're not even going into this jungle to defeat this Predator force. It's just they're gonna, overthrow a coup or something like that.
No, it's some kind of secret CIA op that they don't know about until after the fact. They get sent into a Central American jungle. Alan Dutch Schaefer is Arnold Schwarzenegger, and his team are sent in to rescue a foreign cabinet minister. Carl Weathers plays a CIA agent named Dylan, and we learn that things are not as they completely seem because it's the CIA.
Yep, and we learn that Dylan is the son of a bitch.
Yeah, but in a delightful way because it's Carl Weathers. So they go to this Central American country, run this op, find out things aren't exactly as what they originally thought it was, and then in the attempt to get out, they come across this unknown entity that is slaughtering things left and right, including members of Dutch's team, and it becomes a survival horror story. as they try to survive. And it's one of the formative action sci-fi movies of that era. Even if I don't recall it was particularly well received at the time, but has since become a cult classic, due in part to Schwarzenegger being who he is, and his movies obtaining a certain amount of fame just because he is literally one of the most famous men on the planet. And he's honestly really good in that movie. It's one of my favorite Schwarzenegger performances, to be quite honest, because it feels like it's him, even though he's built like a brick shithouse. I think Dutch is a little bit more one of his human-ish characters, because it's the Predator itself is something that he can't necessarily beat up so easily with his fists or his weapons. He has to think, right. Which I don't think most people would attribute to a Schwarzenegger movie. They just expect explosions and guns and pretty women and But
yeah,
did you know that Jean-Claude Van Damme was supposed to be the Predator, Anthony?
I did not know that. Holy shit, that would have changed the movie.
Yeah, so originally JCVD was supposed to be the Predator himself or itself. But so it was going to be like more of a ninja type hunter, but he's tiny, Jean-Claude Van Damme, right, versus all of these giant men that form up the commando squad. Jesse Ventura, Carl Weathers, Schwarzenegger themselves are all over like 6 feet, and Jean-Claude Van Damme is known to have a hell of an ego.
Yeah.
And being a little whinerson. So he got replaced, and the Predator was played by a 7'2" gentleman by the name of Kevin Peter Hall, who did a fantastic job of personifying that alien. But it's I was very afraid of this movie when I was a kid. I got a better appreciation of it as I got older. And it's genuinely one of my favorite movies for all the reasons that I just went into. So, Anthony, with that being said, what's your next one? And did I steal Predator on your list?
No, actually, I didn't even think of it to consider it a horror movie because I considered it more so an action flick. So great pull on that. But one movie that is definitely considered a horror movie, it's a staple of the horror community, and one I've only seen once. It spawned a lot of different sequels and a remake in 2004. And John, the movie I'm bringing to attention here is Dawn of the Dead from the late 70s, the George Romero flick, zombie flick, essentially, where there's an ever-growing epidemic of zombies, and they're risen from the dead, and it's a group of people just trying to survive. Now, it scared me because, again, there's a lot of POV shots used in the film with a lot of these zombies, and again, they're doing very much grotesque things to these very ever-living people, and so I always appreciated the aspect that it was a horror film that just completely scared the shit out of me. And but as I grew up later and read some things about behind the movie and talking about its social commentary, and I can't remember if I've talked about it on Loungecast before, but essentially the social commentary behind it is a talk about consumerism, and the zombies are supposed to portray the ever-growing need for society, today's society, well, at the time, 1970s society, but it can still apply for today, its need to consume more and more and more and more, essentially leaving the world with less and less natural resources. And so now I've wanted to do a rewatch of this movie with that particular mindset going into it, but again, like I said, I'm a big old baby, and I don't think I'll ever watch this movie again.
Now, are you talking about the original George Romero? You're talking about the original Romero,
yes.
Dawn of the Dead, not the Snyder remake.
God, no, I'm not.
Because running zombies make it worse.
Yes.
Now, are you a running zombies fan or a shuffle zombies fan?
If I were to live in a world, shuffle zombies. For the sake of cinema, the running zombies does take it up to another notch to the point where it's even scarier, because now these things never tire. They're running at least human speed, and holy shit. Fuck all that.
Because you're a big old baby.
Because I'm a big ass baby. Yeah, 100%.
It's okay. I will hold you close. Not because you're a big old baby, but just because you need a comfort hug.
Because I'm a tiny dancer.
A dancer for money. Do what you want me to do.
Transition. John, what is your next movie?
My fourth pick is considered one of the greatest and most influential movies of all time. It's a personal favorite of mine. In part due to a TV show that spawned out of one of the central characters, because it is based off a series of books focusing on this character. I'm talking about the 1991 movie directed by Jonathan Demme with a script by Ted Talley. I'm talking about Silence of the Lambs, Anthony.
Oh, excellent, John. This was on my list as well.
Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it, Anthony.
Let us talk about it, indeed.
Let us talk about it.
I recently did a rewatch of this, I would say about a year ago, John.
I watched it this year with my fiance because I started watching. I started her on the Hannibal TV show, and Hannibal, for those folks not familiar with the Hannibal book series, the series starts with Red Dragon and is a story about how of a serial killer that Hannibal Lecter helps lead protagonist Will Graham capture, and then the subsequent novels deal with Hannibal in some regard, but other main characters as well as out of the picture. But the TV show is more about the background before Red Dragon, before Silence of the Lambs. So, like, in my head, all of this is just after the TV show in some way. And my love of the movie, while strong, when I initially saw the movie, got amplified because of the TV show.
Yeah.
But I mean, on its own, looking at Silence of the Lambs, and this is already after, the Manhunter movie that Michael Mann did based off Red Dragon. So you're already dealing with a pre-established vision of Hannibal Lecter. But arguably what is done here between Jodie Foster's Clarice Starling and Anthony Hopkins' as Dr. Lecter is it's a masterwork. It's a masterwork of two actors at the top of their game, creating and working with on really, really compelling characters. Hannibal, even though he's only in this movie for I think a total of 15 minutes, he's captivating. Right. He's magnetic.
Oh, absolutely. And again, it's got some just iconic moments of Hopkins being on screen and Jodie Foster being on screen, but also just iconic scenes, like the scene where the butterfly, where Hannibal Lecter disembowels the security guard and makes him the butterfly. Like, holy shit. Like, rewatching that a year ago, rewatching that scene, it's just terrifying. And again, we're not talking about a supernatural person like Predator, no. John. We're talking about an actual human being.
Yeah, and that's the thing to remember when it comes to Hannibal in general and Silence of the Lambs, because a lot of the TV show kind of seems like it verges on supernatural, but it's all psychological. It's all within people's heads, and it's just the imagery is just there to show what's on the inside, and sometimes what's on the inside is horrific. You see that with what Buffalo Bill is doing, and a lot. Unfortunately, Silence of the Lambs is dated in some regard because of Buffalo Bill and what that Buffalo Bill thinks of themselves or himself, and it doesn't really match with popular or not. I wouldn't say popular, current opinions on homosexuality and transgender folk. It's dated, but it's a fascinating character study on how a murderer works, both in what Buffalo Bill is and what he's doing to people, and how Hannibal Lecter is and what he's doing to the inmates around him, to Clarice.
And a special shout out to Anthony Heald playing Dr. Frederick Chilton. Yes, I IMDb'd it, obviously, because I couldn't remember his name, but he just plays the best asshole.
Oh, my God. He's so good.
He's so good doing it. And by the time this movie ends, you're like, yeah, you know what? You deserve what you're getting, buddy.
Oh boy. He is one of the prime time Hall of Fame movie assholes.
Absolutely.
And another favorite tick of mine in this movie is how Jonathan Demme shoots this movie. It's all from Clarice's POV for the most part.
Yeah, and you and I have off-screen talked about this, about how it just, again, I think it was when I saw this movie about a year ago, how just the weird POV shots just didn't hit right with me. But after your explanation, I kind of appreciate it a little bit more, so I'll let you go into that a little bit.
Well, I mean, a lot of the movie is done as if you are assuming the point of view of Clarice. So when you're in dialogue scenes, you have a lot of people looking directly at them because they're talking directly to Clarice. But when you cut to Jodie Foster, she's looking off camera. So it's a little disconcerting because you're expecting her to be looking straight on too. I think it's just the Dragnet syndrome, if I want to put a label on it, because if I recall, Dragnet would do that where it would just be back and forth talking head stuff. Right. It's mostly just based off of an old Tonight Show bit that Johnny Carson did with Jack Webb. Clem's Copper Carson's or something like that. I will find it at some point just so that you and I can recreate it on audio.
I'm all for that.
But to talk about Clarice, she is one of the Jodie Foster, honestly, is a heavyweight in this movie.
Yeah.
She won Best Actress for this, well deserving, because she embodies a young agent who is trying to stay over the waterline of what her profession is calling for, and really dealing with her own trauma. I'm not necessarily sure the best way, considering that I think Dr. Lecter is acting as her therapist.
Yeah.
In an indirect way.
It's an interesting dynamic they had, because part of it's mentor, part of it's psychiatrist, and part of it's just he's using her. He's psychologically using her to feed his own maliciousness, if that's a word.
Yeah. And it gets complicated because the source material makes it complicated, and subsequent movies continue that complication. I won't get into it here because it's just a mess of confusing, and I'm not sure I can talk about it with due justice, because it requires, I think, a little bit of decompression on our part, but she is arguably one of the most famous protagonists, in my opinion. And this is one of the few, if not the first, horror movie to win as many awards as it did through the Academy, which they should be looking at genre more, as far as I'm concerned, because you look at some genre performances and you get really, really great stuff. I mean, like, I'm just gonna mention this movie offhand. It's one of my honorable mentions, but look at some of the performances in John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly think a lot of the performances in that movie, from Wilford Brimley to Keith David to Kurt Russell, honestly, they deserve. They get accolades. They deserve many, many more, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that is totally fair. Totally fair, John. And before I move on to my next movie, John, just a special shout out to Ted Levine playing Buffalo Bill.
We could do a whole podcast just on his performance alone, but I mean,
just creepy, equal parts sinister, or just knocks it out of the park to really put the icing on the cake of this film.
Yeah, and sad in some ways, because he's so confused about what he wants and what he thinks he wants, and you're absolutely right. It is a phenomenal physical performance by Ted Levine, and it's still just it was centered in character, in trying to portray this damaged individual, however dated it may be.
Right.
It is, there's a reason his performance keeps getting, I guess, memed, almost 30 years on from it.
Exactly, John. Exactly. Now,
But
moving
Anthony,
on.
before we do, I have a question.
Yes.
Would you fuck me?
Oh God. Oh God. No, that's you creepily nailed the voice, and I don't want to hear any more because that's just creepy. Uh, it put a
Hey,
chill down my
it's our
spine.
spooky month.
Oh, it put a chill down my spine, man. My next movie that I assume is going to be either on your list or an honorable mention, to say the least, is late 1970s film that you introduced me to, John, and that's Alien.
That is on my list as well.
Perfect. Let's talk about it. Now,
Let's talk about Alien.
I'm just going to say the cast is just the who's who of acting by itself. Sigourney Weaver does an excellent job talking about survival horror. Holy shit.
She's the queen. She is the queen for good reason.
Yeah. And I appreciate that it didn't take like an Aliens approach, where it's just all action packed. Let's have guns blazing against this unstoppable alien force. No, this is just people trying to survive, trying to get out of this space station alive. And again, just the acting of Sir Ian Holm that we gave credence to many episodes ago upon his passing as Ash, and John Hurt as Kane. John, just holy shit, man.
Yeah, you got Yaphet Kotto. You got Harry Dean Stanton, the champ himself. Veronica Cartwright, Tom Skerritt. It is an all-star cast doing, honestly, legendary work. This is a movie that's going to be talked about, I think, 100 years down the line. It is a visually stunning film. It is a sci-fi horror film directed by Ridley Scott, written by Dan O'Bannon, based on a story by O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett. It is famously featuring designs by noted German artist H.R. Giger. I will not do the voice because I have an impression of him. Anthony hates it.
You can do it for the audience.
Hello, my name is H.R. Giger. I did the Alien and Ridley Scott's Alien.
Yes, you are correct. I do hate that impression.
It looked like a penis, Anthony. The alien looked like penis.
Yes, it did. It did.
So, putting Giger aside, we're going to get a lot of emails on how bad that was and how I should never do it again. But the designs in this movie are absolutely beyond this world. They are the most original things that had been put to a sci-fi or film or a horror film to that of this nature probably ever. I mean, you're talking about this movie came out in 1979. I mean, this is in the aftermath of Star Wars, so I mean, and even then, the alien just stands out against everything. It's one of the most terrifying creatures to ever walk across the cinema screen, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and not only that, John, but the other, like the face hugger alien.
Yeah.
The chest explosion from John Hurt, like just, again, spoiler alert, obviously, but just scenes like that just puts the eerie. I mean, hell, the conversation when Ripley is talking with Ash about the special order that the company put into place. And again, I don't want to spoil too much because I do, honestly, out of all the movies that are on my list personally, this is the one I want everybody to go see.
Yeah, and I think it's something that everybody, it's almost a 40-year-old movie, so I think we're not giving it any due credit that people haven't given it before, but it is something that kind of got lost, I think, in the subsequent films that came after it. Even though, I think each one has its own value, but I mean, and to be honest, value is dependent on the mind of the beholder. But there's something primal about this movie that I think, the moment you cross it over with the Predator, as cool as that is, you lose something a little bit. And I think that there's something eerie and just primal. And I'm trying to think of the phrase for it. It's because I mean, what this alien does is just hit at a deep primal level. I mean, you're talking, like Anthony, you mentioned the face hugger. That's designed to scare men because it's a phallic rape of your face. And you know, the alien is meant to just be this kind of violent merging of the masculine and the feminine, and just going after these working class people who are just trying to do a job.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's part of the appeal of this for me over the other ones, is that, you know, you get the human aspect of this. I mean, there's a discussion about, you know, pay divisions on who's going to get paid more versus who's going to get paid less, and how people get more money that they feel that they're owed. And that's a valid discussion, you know, that people have every day. That's something relatable. And it's not like these people aren't the commandos being led by Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know, these they're capable in one way, but they're not prepared for something like this. And that makes the horror sit even, you know, harder in the audience.
Yeah, exactly, John. Now, John, what's next on your list to talk about on our spooky countdown?
The spookies. It's time for the more spookies. I don't know what that voice was. This might be on your list, Anthony. It's a personal favorite of mine, mostly because of how wacky it can get and just the sheer creativity that these group of friends put onto the stage. It is a sequel to one of the most terrifying movies I have never seen, but I hear it's so scary that you're scarred for life. But I personally prefer the sequel. I'm talking about Evil Dead 2.
Now that I left off, Evil Dead, the first one, is actually very scary, and I forgot to even mention that, even in honorable mentions, John. But yes, the first Evil Dead was completely spooky. The second one was like a spoof of the first.
Yeah, Evil Dead 2 is a comedy horror movie and is a parody sequel to the original film, The Evil Dead. Evil Dead 2 is kind of acts as a remake of The Evil Dead. The circumstances are more or less the same, but they're played a little bit more campier. I just love this movie because it is Sam Raimi, his brother. I forget his brother's name. Ted, you know, Bruce Campbell, Ted Raimi, Sam Raimi, Rob Tapper, Bruce Campbell, all of these friends who are just making a movie together and just having the most crazy time and honestly innovating film and and makeup and prosthetics. You don't get Sam Raimi on Spider-Man without Evil Dead launching his career, you know? Exactly. You don't get Bruce Campbell, the man, the coolest man on the face of the earth, without Sam Raimi and Evil Dead.
Yeah, I mean, it has one of my favorite lines in cinematic history where Bruce Campbell finally attaches a chainsaw to his long gone arm or his long gone hand and just goes, groovy. And goes maniacal.
It's such a great physical performance by Bruce Campbell as Ash. He's literally just this poor kid going slowly insane and then back to some kind of sanity, but he's still very much broken. But it's the things he gets up to are funny as hell, but it's still creepy and it still works as a horror movie, even if you lose the comedy stuff. I just love it, honestly.
Yeah. No, it's a great performance by Bruce Campbell. Like I said, the effects are great. I think they still hold up. Like I would have left Evil Dead 2 off of my list because, again, to me it's a movie I would watch again because it's not necessarily horror to me. It's just more of the comedic side for me personally. Yeah. But it still works. Like I said, it still works as a horror movie because of some of the shit that goes down. But
yeah, and I think
if you want also like a pure horror of that series of movies and now I guess TV show, you would definitely switch over to the first one because that was more of the horror of the three.
Yeah, and Ash versus the Evil Dead, the TV show, walks that line of comedy versus horror, and more towards the horror side from what I can recall, because Bruce Campbell will do all the comedy stuff just by being the charming man that he is. But I think it's an essential movie. I think what they do in that movie, in how they film it, what decisions they make, I think it defines movie making for the next probably 20 years.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you on that, John. Not at all. Now, speaking of movies that define genres and define how cinematic things go for the next 20 plus years, John, I'm going to talk about my number one film, and that's going to be the 1973 classic, The Exorcist, with Linda Blair and her great performance in this film. What a pinnacle of the horror scene. A great movie. Everyone in it's great. It's, a lot of great lines. The priests in it are excellent. Everyone in it's excellent. Spooky to the core, and still probably the most scary movie I've ever seen to this day.
Yeah, I've only read the book, and the book has frightened me so much that I never really want to see the movie. And it's also due in part to, I think, Anthony, you will agree, as a fellow lapsed Catholic, it's a little too close to home.
Yeah, fair enough. Anything to do with exorcism and bringing that into the world, it's just, I'm always like a nope.
Fuck that noise. Fuck that noise.
Pretty much.
So it's just, it's the old Catholics in us, I guess. It is just like, we're just trained to default to fuck that when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah, pretty much. Now, John, I don't want to dive too much into it, because I think everyone knows this film. Everyone knows about what's in it, who's in it, and also my internet's being shitty again. But I will give you, before we move on to your number one movie and your honorable mentions, before my internet craps out, I will say my honorable mention is Mask of the Phantasm, because of just the scene alone of what Joker does to the poor people and the laughing gas that he puts on.
Oh, yeah.
That scene where Batman discovers like the laughing gas, and that poor person just like with the smile pasted on their face scared the Jesus out of me as a kid. And so that's why yeah, exactly. That's why it made my honorable mention. Now, John, go into your final and honorable mentions, and let's talk about it.
Yeah, I am very much jealous that you got to have Batman Mask of the Phantasm, one of my favorite movies of all time, as your honorable mention. I am jealous. I am immensely jealous. I just hope you know that. Now, my number one movie, Anthony, and you're gonna, the moment I tell you this, and I think you could probably guess what it's going to be. It is a movie that you and a number of our friends said I started to emulate some of the speech patterns and mannerisms of one of the main characters.
Oh, okay. I think I know where we're going.
It is a movie that when I finished showing it to you and our friends, you looked at me and said, John, thank you for that movie, but fuck you for that movie. Yep. That movie is the 2000s American black comedy slasher movie, co-written and directed by Mary Harron with Guinevere Turner. That is American Psycho. Yep.
Good choice.
This is one of my favorite movies of all time. I can watch this movie back to back to back to back and will never get tired of it. I hate the book. It is a piece of trash. Just skip over the book, watch the movie. The movie is a tour de force. Christian Bale is a dynamite in this movie. He is unbelievably good and fantastic in this movie. He deserved so much awards that this movie did not get because it just got trashed. At least, and so, well, I wouldn't say trashed. It just didn't, it's a movie that's not designed to be huge numbers, like a Nightmare on Elm Street or something like that. It's a psychological black comedy. It's very niche. It's skewering 80s culture. It's skewering a lot of the Wall Street muckety
Yeah.
mucks. You know, the people that run our country now
Yeah.
are the people that are like are shown in this movie a lot, and they have a lot of if Patrick Bateman is any example on what the Wall Street type are like, we are in trouble.
And what I appreciate about this film, John, is that you don't really know if he's actually going psycho or if this is all just in his head or what exactly. You never get a clear picture overall of his like mental state, or if his mental state is actually what's going on in his world. Or I appreciate its kind of dubious nature. I appreciate its kind of complexity, because you can either watch this as a simple film or you can pick apart its layers and view it as complex as you really want it to be. That's what I really appreciate about this film.
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, you can see it as just a straight up slasher movie where this, you know, well-to-do Wall Street guy is just murdering people left and right. And then it becomes something else. And it was always something else, talking about the complexities of what 80s society in America was like, and certain obsessions between drugs and pop culture and, you know, platitudes just because you wanted to fit in. It's a terrifying movie in that it's a little bit reflective of actual people. And it is, but more importantly, it's also fun to watch.
Yeah, I agree.
It is a dynamite movie to watch. It moves. It's exciting. Christian Bale is thrilling. Everybody around him is bringing their A game as well. You have a stacked cast here. You have Willem Dafoe, you have Jared Leto, you have Josh Lucas, Samantha Mathis, Chloe Sevigny, Justin Theroux, Reggie Cathy, Reese Witherspoon is in this movie.
Honestly, I forgot William Dafoe's in this movie. That's how stacked this movie is.
And Willem Dafoe's performance is one of the most complicated things, and it goes to this whole idea that you talked about earlier, Anthony, where you just don't know what is actually going on inside the head of Patrick Bateman and whether the world is actually reflecting what he's seeing and saying. It was a movie that burrowed deep into me around high school, so much so that I had to separate myself from it because I felt like I was losing a little bit too much of myself to it, at least in mannerism wise, and I didn't really feel comfortable with that. But it's still one of my all-time favorite movies, and I would encourage, if you haven't watched it, by God, go find a copy. Go find it on streaming. Go do it now. It's absolutely worth it. Anthony, do you have any other honorable mentions before I get into mine? Or
not an honorable mention, but one thing I want to say is don't jump in our mentions about that these movies aren't even that scary. I'm on the forefront. I know there are probably 1,000 more other horror films out there that are 1,000 times scarier than my list. But as I previously mentioned a few times, I'm a big old baby, and I try to stay away from this genre of film as much as I can because life is scary enough as it is.
Yeah, and to add to Anthony's already very exacting and eloquent statement, this is our personal opinion. We're not telling everybody to, this is the be all end all. We're definitely telling you on some of these, if you haven't watched them, go watch them because they're great. They're great movies and just great horror movies. But at the end of the day, still just our opinion. You can follow them if you want to. If you don't, we'll see races, folks. So I have a couple honorable mentions. I already mentioned The Thing, the John Carpenter remake of the original 50s movie of the same title, starring Kurt Russell, among many others. Notably,
great head of hair on him, too.
Great head of hair, great beard, too. Because, my God, even at his current age, Kurt Russell can still grow a head of hair and a beard like nobody's business, and I hate it. Because I'm losing my hair. I have a giant. This video is not going to be put up on YouTube, but I have a giant 5 head and I hate it. But it stars the late great Wilford Brimley and Keith David, among others. It is a great sci-fi horror movie that really pushes, what bleak can be.
Yeah.
But it's still incredibly entertaining. It's incredibly insightful. It is a masterpiece, if in every sense of the word, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Another one I'd like to mention is David Fincher's Seven.
Great.
Which
I
which-
counted that. I left it off my list because I count that more as like a thriller, more so than a horror film. But it can be counted, and I'm glad it's in your honorable mentions, John.
Yeah, and we get to talk about it a little bit because it's just, not too much, but I'm glad you agree that it's worth bringing up, because it is one of those, like The Thing. It's another kind of psychological existential film about what it means to deal with the horrors of both ourselves and the outside. Even though The Thing is dealing with an extraterrestrial form of that, Seven is very much in line with trying to address the demons of humanity,
Yes.
and not anything that comes out from beyond.
Oh, absolutely. And again, stellar cast, stellar performances all the way around, honestly.
Yeah, I think the only reason I left it off my list is because I feel Kevin Spacey might have tainted it a little bit for me, but
That's fair. Yeah, that's totally
yeah, only because I need to revisit that movie in the wake of everything he's done, but it's still a phenomenal movie. What Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman do are fantastic performances from both of them. And I'm honestly kind of glad Brad Pitt has stuck with doing more of these little smaller movies, not the big kind of blockbuster stuff, even though I know he's done big blockbuster stuff.
right.
He fits more these type of movies, I think, more than anything else. I also like to mention Jordan Peele's Get Out.
I have yet to see it, but everyone gives it critical acclaim. Everyone says it's great. I just, again, trying to stay away from the horror genre. I hear it's amazing, though.
Yeah, it is Jordan Peele's directorial debut, and it is a hell of a debut. It also becomes one of the movies that is, would be said by the white people in that movie that they loved. It is a fantastic, distillation of what it means to have a black focused or an African American focused horror movie, and deal with the social fears that Black America has that white America doesn't have to deal with, and it's incredibly performed all the way around. It's a masterful directorial debut. The way that movie is shot honestly feels like it is, for lack of a better term, it is Jordan Peele laying his dick down and saying, what you got?
Yeah.
As far as, in my opinion, he's just showing, I can do this. What everybody else, bring this game, because I'm here to win it, not to just mess around. I got a few more. One is Young Frankenstein.
Okay. I mean,
it's a stretch. It's very much a stretch.
yeah,
I just love that movie.
No, it's a great movie. It's a stretch for horror, but again, it's Mel Brooks, and I love Mel Brooks, obviously. So
yeah, I only put it on here because I had Evil Dead 2, and I figured it was fair game. But like you said, I don't think it qualifies enough as a horror movie. But since we're talking about spookies, and it involves a Frankenstein, and that counts as a spooky, I felt it deserved to be on there. The other one I wanted to talk about is kind of like Venom, but not. It is a sci-fi version of a similar premise of Venom, where a symbiote type thing attaches itself to a human being. It is a movie directed by a guy named Lee Wanell, called Upgrade.
okay,
And it's a small movie. It led to its director Lee Wanell to get the most recent remake of The Invisible Man by Universal Studios, starring what was her name? Elizabeth, not Banks.
I say Hurley, but I know it's not Hurley.
No.
It's the main lead from the Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, and from Mad Men. Her last name is escaping me at the moment. But it's about a man who gets into a car accident that ends up killing his wife, and he learns that there was more to that accident, and he ends up being the receptacle of an experimental microchip that gets implanted into his spine that allows him to walk. But turns out that microchip is a lot more sentient than he realized, and things get really weird. But it's a very... I hesitate to... I didn't end up putting it on my top 5 because it ends up being a little bit juvenile just because it's overly violent. But yeah, it's within the same kind of dark criteria or dark examining of the soul as a Seven or a Thing, where they're just kind of the cast and the story of that movie are just examining what it means to lose yourself and your soul, and what a relationship with a toxic entity like that does to you. My last honorable mention is a movie. Now, Anthony, you're going to judge me for this because of who stars in this movie, but I am talking about the Nicolas Cage starring film from 2018 called Mandy. Now,
Okay.
I know Nick Cage is a little bit hit and miss, but this is a almost Lovecraftian style horror movie, starring Nicolas Cage, who is, I guess, he's just some guy. I think he's a lumberjack or something like that. He's living with his girlfriend, and this hippie cult murders her, and he goes on a revenge mission to slaughter them all. And the farther that his character is named Red Miller, the farther Red goes down that trail, the darker it gets. But it's this neon colored, violent examination of revenge and love, and honestly might be my favorite Nick Cage performance. I've only seen this movie once. It is weird as shit.
Yeah.
It is absolutely 100%.
It's later in life Nick Cage. So yeah, it's going to be weird.
But it fits. It's weird, but it feels genuine, if that makes sense. It doesn't feel like Vampires Kiss Nick Cage, or whatever that movie was fucking called.
I couldn't tell you.
I couldn't tell you either. I just know it as a meme, which maybe I shouldn't, but I don't know. That's just me saying maybe I should watch it, but probably not. But I just kind of love the atmosphere of this movie. It feels like what I guess Lovecraft could have been without the racism.
Yeah, fair enough.
And it's just like, I appreciate just how ballsy this movie is, and how fucking committed Nick Cage goes to this role, and what everybody else in this film does. Because Nick Cage is the most recognizable person. The other ones are just like smaller folk who are that aren't on the same level of notoriety as him. But it's metal, it's just this awesome kind. It belongs on the side of a van type of movie. That's what it feels like. It's like it tells us, it's just like this metal story that gets told across the most badass van you come across, walking down Sunset Boulevard or something.
That's pretty fair. I might check it out, John. I might be into it. I actually might be into it.
Look, the climax of the movie is a chainsaw duel, Anthony.
All right, you sold me.
And he has the most badass axe I've ever seen in my fucking life. I'm going to send it to you. I'm going to send you a picture of it later, and you're going to be like, okay, I'm fucking in.
Perfect.
And
now,
then
John,
maybe at some point we do like a live commentary of it just to fill for our spooky month.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
If my internet's not garbage like it has been tonight. Now, John, speaking of things that have to end tonight, send us off as only you know how.
Indeed. Ladies, gentlemen, gentlefolk, good listeners. This has been another episode of the Ludic Loungecast. I have been one of your delightful co-hosts, John Soares, and with me, and on behalf of my wonderful co-host, my brother from another mother, Antonicus Gluteus Maximus IV, the grandest booty of all, and only I can talk about it because he feels shy. Anthony to his friends. We'd like to thank you all for lounging with us. And good night, everybody.
Bye!
Hello, good citizens of Gotham City. This is TV's Batman, Adam West. You have been listening to the Ludic Loungecast. For more, be sure to follow us on Twitter at Ludic Lounge. For Antonicus at RojoLoco44. And John at just_John_0891. Or feel free to email us at theludiclounge@gmail.com. Quick, Robin, to the Bat Pulse. We have a podcast to listen to!